I could name at least 30 people I know who are no longer teaching, who are certified teachers.
Recruiting and retaining teachers has been incredibly challenging. Our candidate pools have shrunk dramatically.
To entice into the field of education, we need to look at what we're doing and engage in innovative practices.
Watch Teachers Who Aren't Teaching. Who are they? And how do we get them back? Tuesday, October 19th at 10:30 p.m.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining the documentary screening today. My name is Maggie Ibis, and I'm from the Regional Educational Laboratory Midwest, or REL Midwest, and I will be your moderator today. To start, I will provide a brief overview of the documentary. Then we'll watch the documentary. It's about 24 minutes long. For the second half of the hour, we will have a discussion with a fantastic panel of educators, leaders, and experts who are featured in the documentary. We have with us today Dr. Natalia Nedco of the American Institutes for Research, Leah Breen of the Michigan Department of Education, Rajeshri Bhatia of School Smarts, and Ben Pineda of Hazlitt Middle School in Hazlitt, Michigan. We're looking forward to chatting with the four of you later on. This documentary, called Teachers Who Aren't Teaching, Who Are They and How Do We Get Them Back?, was produced by REL Midwest and Detroit Public Television earlier this year. REL Midwest is a federally funded research lab that serves 7 states in the Midwest region, including Michigan. We conduct applied research, training, and coaching to improve academic outcomes for students. We also do extensive communications and outreach work to engage audiences in the content that we produce. This documentary presents research on the primary reasons that many certified teachers are not teaching in public schools and the core incentives that would motivate them to return to the classroom. The program also focuses on the ways state policymakers and district leaders can develop strategies to recruit and retain quality educators. It features the perspectives of district leaders as well as longtime teachers, those teachers who have left the profession and since returned, and those who are certified but are no longer teaching in public schools. As you're watching the program, if you have comments or questions to share, we encourage you to put them in the comment section on Facebook or YouTube, however you're watching today. And now, without further ado, let's watch the documentary.
Teachers Who Aren't Teaching. Who are they? And how do we get them back? Is a co-production of Regional Educational Laboratory Midwest and Detroit Public Television, with funding provided by REL Midwest through funds provided by the U.S. Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences.
Do you know of any teachers who have left the classroom and then returned?
Yeah, I was trying to think of that question. I don't think I do.
Honestly, I've thought about this. I don't.
Teachers who have left the classroom and then have returned to the fold. I don't personally know any. It's sort of like a mythic creature from what I understand.
No, I don't know of any teachers who've gone back to the classroom.
I wish I knew a huge handful of teachers. As it stands right now, I know of one.
I could name at least 30 people I know, first and last name, easily, who are no longer teaching, who are certified teachers.
Most people I graduated with are no longer teaching, which is heartbreaking because they're all such great people.
Recruiting and retaining teachers has been incredibly challenging. Our candidate pools have shrunk dramatically.
Regional Educational Laboratory, or REL Midwest, is an initiative of the United States Department of Education. There is a total of 10 RELs, and they're geographically bound. REL Midwest serves 7 Midwestern states. REL Midwest has recently completed a study where we looked at who are certified teachers who got certified in Michigan, but who are not teaching in public schools. So what we found out from our study is that Michigan has about 61,000 teachers who were certified in Michigan, but who aren't teaching in public schools. And most of those teachers, like over 90% of the teachers, are of non-retirement age.
If you look at surveys, just recent surveys, 84% of teachers are saying that teaching is much more stressful than it was in years past. We're seeing teachers indicating that salary is an issue. We saw a lot of teacher strikes over the last 5 or so years that were really focused around teacher pay.
And that's probably not surprising because you'll find that teachers in Michigan need to have a salary increase of about 22-23% to align the salary with other professionals who have similar experience and have similar education.
I know educators that started as teachers and didn't get pay raises for 7 years. And, anecdotally, they say, I knew it wasn't going to be a lucrative profession, but I certainly expected to get annual increases so I could afford to support my family. And it is preventing people from staying in the profession.
There's also this expectation that teachers are somehow supposed to come in and you're supposed to give of yourself and not expect anything. And that's just not the right. These are professionals. These are professionals who are shaping our next generation.
I have seen certified teachers leave the classroom. It pains me when we see qualified people who were passionate, people who got in this field and have invested time, money, and energy to try to make a difference on behalf of students, decide that this isn't meeting what they signed up for.
I am really, really seeing the writing on the wall as young professionals coming into the field of teaching are struggling making ends meet. And, they're having student loan situations, and then you've got this base pay, and then the very next year, the base pay is the same, and then the next year, the base pay is the same. I think that is really problematic, and I think it's a big turnoff.
And I get that it's a challenge for raising salaries, but if you don't do that, the cost is significantly higher.
The thing that's so bizarre is nobody goes into teaching for money. We're not expecting to make a doctor's salary. We just want to be able to live. I just want to be able to pay my bills.
Several things inspired me to be a teacher. And the first one is the love of kids, being able to be a role model for kids.
Growing up, I loved babysitting. As soon as I could babysit, I did. I loved working with kids. I loved playing with them and engaging them.
I always wanted to be a teacher. I was the little kid who, played school in free time in the classroom.
I think teaching is a calling. You don't do it for the fame. You don't do it for the money. You do it because you are called to do it.
I accidentally fell into teaching. It's the best accident that ever happened. I don't think I could find a profession that I would love more than teaching. I feel very fortunate and blessed in the idea that I get to go to work. I love Mondays. When it comes right down to making ends meet and the bills getting paid and me living the best life I can, I don't feel like I've been hindered with the pay of teaching. And I think most teachers might disagree with me on that. I was very lucky. I graduated from Michigan State University in 1988 with 0 student loans. That puts me so far ahead of the pack because most people leave the college and higher ed situation with loans that are around for several years, more than several years. And when you look at the private sector and the pay scale, I think it's easy to leave the profession of teaching the way it is right now. I do know one teacher that left the profession and came back, but I think leaving the teaching profession for him was easy to do because there is so much stacked against you as a teacher.
I taught for 5 years. I left teaching and then I came back into teaching. I got my first job here at Bath Middle School in 2014, straight out of Michigan State. And although there are many wonderful aspects to teaching, I thought that I wanted to try something different, something that wasn't as stressful as teaching is. It got a little bit overwhelming for me, and I wanted to be able to get into a different career path that's still meaningful, but maybe paid more. I learned very quickly that did not suit my personality type very well. And the desk job, the 9-to-5 life was not really for me. And so I made the decision to get back into teaching after about 4 months of being out of it. I actually took a pay cut to come back into education from what I was doing outside of it. There wasn't any direct incentive other than, I wanted to make a difference in kids' lives. It's a very kind of emotional tear back and forth. My heart wants to be in teaching, but sometimes my head wants to be outside of teaching.
So I think trying to keep teachers in the classroom is a little bit of a challenge in and of itself because it's very specific to their individual situations. Sometimes it has to do with the fact that they've burned out. Sometimes there are life factors that are happening, whether it be children of their own or having to care for other family members that are impacting that decision.
I have been a kindergarten teacher for 10 years. I left because I was pregnant with my wife and I's second child. We did the math on it, and it made sense for me to quit for the cost of daycare, especially for infants. It's so expensive. So it really didn't make sense for me to be working. I didn't want to put my career on hold. I was very passionate about the school I was at. I had just gotten my master's degree while I was pregnant with my daughter, so I definitely didn't want to stop. I was glad to be with my children because I love them, obviously, but to be forced into that position because mine was less lucrative was frustrating. My ex-wife now and I amicably split, and we share dual custody of our children. We have 50-50, and I knew that I needed to go back to my career. When I got back, however, they told me that they had to start me at about $10,000 lower. And not only was I was teaching from home. Setting up my classroom at my house for the pandemic, I asked friends to donate things. And that's the sad part, right? Is like we have to beg, borrow, and steal as teachers. Yeah, so this is the space that I had to go when the pandemic hit. This is where I taught. I taught from this chair in my basement, in the classroom that was this empty room. And I had to furnish it myself so it didn't look so sad to the kids. And I put up our posters and I put up boards from school. And then I had to get another monitor. So I was able to get one off of Facebook from an old high school friend. And for me, as a single woman, if I did not have my ex-wife paying for the amount she does of daycare, I wouldn't be able to be a teacher. There's no way. And that's not okay. I have my master's degree. I'm 36. I can't afford to put my kids in daycare by myself and pay my mortgage. And I live frugally. I went to food banks during the pandemic, and I'm not ashamed of it. I think that people should know that I went to food banks during the pandemic because we make that little.
The profession in of itself has changed dramatically. 40, 50 years ago, education was lifted up by society. Society doesn't necessarily view education in the same lens anymore. And that makes it challenging.
It's challenging when you are treated like a second-rate, human being. And in other countries, teachers are some of the most respected professionals in the country.
There are surveys that compare salaries in different countries. Definitely the United States is nowhere near the top.
We're disrespecting the true profession.
We really need this foundational piece where our teachers feel like they're valued and recognized for the work that they do. And if we don't have that, then we're just asking individuals to join the profession and join it with a lower salary, knowing that it's a stressful but an impactful job.
And the weird thing about that job is you always were made to feel that you weren't doing enough, even if you couldn't humanly fit in more time.
I taught public education for 30 years, all in special ed. And at the end of the 30 years, I felt that I just was very ready to move on to something else. I'm a realtor with Keller Williams, so in essence, I own my own business. And yeah, I love it. I feel that in real estate, I'm still able to do those things that I really loved about teaching. You're building relationships. You're advocating for the needs of families. But those things, those constraints about teaching that I didn't like, being chained to a classroom 24/7. You didn't have flexibility in your day at all. I missed so much of my own children's things that took place during the day.
Well, I taught for 17 and a half years, all in the same district, took over the International Baccalaureate courses, previously working with principals that supported and appreciated what I could do. That philosophy, as you change administrations, changes. People that didn't necessarily maybe have all the best information or background were making pretty large decisions. I kind of just had a collapse. I just felt unsupported. It was the hardest decision I'd ever made. And I left mid-year. I actually went on mental leave. And so I opted to kind of go on sabbatical. And then I had the opportunity to take skills from the classroom where I'm at now, which is an instructional designer at a financial institution. I think there was a little bit more self-worth that came with the private sector. I do think when you let go of some of that, something that's so emotionally draining, you do just find time for yourself or for others or your pursuits or just your own sort of happiness. But I'd be a liar if I said I didn't miss the classroom or miss that experience with my students. But it seemed like the right thing to do. I felt like the box that I was getting put in was getting smaller and smaller. As a result, the box that then I had to put my students in got smaller and smaller. I feel like it is imperative that administration have belief in the fact that teachers are the expert in what they're doing. So trust in that and let me do the thing that I'm there to do. Or if that seems too scary, ask for my input. Make decisions with me, not for me. That would be, I think, a monumental change.
No teacher leaves the classroom thinking, bye, students. We all want to be there.
Teacher turnover is a problem for students. There's evidence to support that the longer a teacher stays, the more chances they have to improve their craft and the better that result is for students.
I've watched some classrooms have turnover of 2 or 3 teachers in a year. So imagine the consistency for students when we know that structure is how children thrive.
When districts and schools don't have a certified teacher to fill a teaching vacancies, the students aren't getting the best teacher for that subject.
And it's particularly concerning for our students that live in underserved school communities where they have been disproportionately impacted by teacher shortages for the last decade.
You see kids who maybe they've grown up in tough situations, and the educators have made a difference in their lives.
So the more we support teachers, whether it be by salaries or other sort of incentives or supports, those students that are disproportionately disadvantaged in our underserved communities, those students will be more likely to have a prepared and qualified teacher.
In our study, we have also explored incentives that would motivate teachers to go back to teaching. And we found that teachers most frequently listed an increase in salary as one of their most desirable incentives. And we also see that the support of school leaders is fundamental in many ways, right? For having teachers stay teaching at that school and recruiting additional teachers.
If you want the best and brightest to join your team, you have to convince them with salary and with a job that's impactful. I think we can say that teaching is an impactful profession, but when we talk about salaries, there's a missing piece there.
We have to look at how to make it possible to pay teachers more, not just so that we can retain who we have, but I believe that will help in attracting new people to the field.
I think teachers need a larger salary to compensate them for the extra time that it takes outside of the normal working hours. And then I think it's resources within the school to be able to help them carry out the duties of their job.
In other professions, you can choose to turn it off. You don't have to be available. But when you're a teacher, there's an expectation that you're available 24/7. And that just is not sustainable.
I've seen staff members who have said, you know what, I just want something different. It isn't what it once was. And that's hard. It's challenging because there's so much excitement that you get from seeing students achieve their dreams. And when you lose that, when you burn out, it's just hard.
Like with any job, I think that who you work for makes a huge difference in whether you stay or you go.
So the onboarding process is important. Assigning the right types of mentors, providing support, and helping people through those first couple of years, which are so challenging. What happens when teachers are exceptional? 10, 15 years in, they're honed into their craft. They are surgical in how they can build relationships and how they can make sure that students are successful. Those are the times we have to keep lifting them up.
So I think that school leaders can play a huge role in this when they're empowered to do so. There are times when school leaders' hands are tied as well in terms of what they can do.
It's very difficult for the Department of Education to implement policies that affect salary. Pay scale is something that is locally negotiated within our school districts.
Great communities don't just happen by accident. They're designed, they're built, they're worked at. And our legislators have got to see schools as an important component of great communities.
And so I think legislation is so crucial in retaining the teachers that we have, recruiting teachers that never thought that they'd want to go into this beautiful profession called education. And legislation can certainly fix things right now and prioritize directions in school so that a child is very well prepared for the real world and not just test scores and rote learning.
Certainly, our legislatures could impact teacher salary. There are states that have statewide salary schedules that all local school districts have to adhere to, and local school districts can greatly impact their salaries in negotiations. Recently, Detroit Public Schools raised their entry salary significantly, and they've seen an influx of new educators into their school district as a result.
My advice for state legislators to be able to get teachers retained is definitely a robust funding for all the needs that teachers face.
Create a system in which education can thrive, which then allows administration to be supported. Administration then needs to pass that support down to their teachers so the teachers can pass it on to their students.
Working conditions and the supportive school leadership also plays a really instrumental role in keeping them in the profession.
So from a district leader standpoint, one of the most important things that we can do is try to create the right culture.
It is imperative that administration have the experience of what they are expecting their staff to do, endure.
I understand that administrators have a very tough job. At the same time, administrators can make or break a teacher's experience teaching. And if a teacher does not enjoy their relationship with their administrator, they are going to either leave the profession or they'll leave the district. I've been very fortunate. I'm very close with my principal, and she does a fantastic job.
When I think about the incentives, there's making sure that we have the right pathways for teachers to be able to re-enter or even jump in if they're from outside of education completely.
I think removing some of the barriers to bringing teachers into the field. Recently, the certification laws in the state of Michigan did get changed a bit and allow for, alternative certification programs to exist that can really help bring committed, competent people into the teaching field. And I think things like that are really helpful.
MDE has a series of recruitment and retention activities for educators and school administrators. We also just launched the Welcome Back Proud Michigan Educator campaign, where we're trying to make recertification easier for teachers that would like to return to classrooms. We're waiving professional learning hours that they need to recertify to get them immediately back in the classroom at full salary. To entice career changers into the field of education, we need to look at what we're doing and engage in innovative practices.
With respect to the educators here in the Wilson Talent Center, what we do is an annual authorization through the Department of Education that allows them to take courses concurrently while they actually start their career.
It can be hard to entice career changers because it's often a pay cut, but I do think there are other benefits, and that's sharing the love of what they do with children.
When you ask a group of adults, any group of adults, to say, take a moment and remember your favorite teacher, every single person can remember someone. Their impact on us as adults, right, is so great that it doesn't match the investment we're making into them.
I can say that for those individuals that have left teaching, maybe the standard of life has shifted and, our salaries in some senses have increased, but all of us still miss working with our students. The reason why teachers stay in the classroom is because they love their students.
There's this magic that happens that you can't explain to anybody. For me, it's the point when a student realizes that they're doing something independently.
You are preparing a human being for life. And that is something that I will never take for granted.
Having an educator that you trust and is knowledgeable and is good at their craft is gold.
We need adequate pay. And I'm not saying high pay, I'm saying adequate, so that it is just meeting us where we need to be.
I'd like to live in a world where teachers are among the highest regarded with things we value highly, like medicine.
My hope that in 5 years, there's not a teacher left who says, I have to leave teaching because I cannot afford to teach. I want that to be a thing of the past.
Teachers who aren't teaching. Who are they? And how do we get them back? Is a co-production of Regional Educational Laboratory Midwest and Detroit Public Television, with funding provided by REL Midwest through funds provided by the U.S. Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences.
I'd like to introduce myself and our panelists that are with us today. Again, my name is Maggie, and I am a Research and Communications Associate at REL Midwest. I support efforts to make research relevant and accessible to practitioners through products such as videos, events, blog posts, and infographics. I also support collaboration with public TV stations to produce documentaries like this one. We also have with us Dr. Natalia Nedco. She's a senior researcher at American Institutes for Research with expertise in study design and methodology and substantive background in K-12 education and teacher quality. She is skilled in instrument development, quantitative and qualitative data collection and analysis, and synthesis of findings. Nedco leads several federally and privately funded rigorous studies and evaluations that use mixed methods and rely on qualitative and quantitative data. Nedco provides technical assistance to external agencies to grow their research and evaluation capacity. Nedco is an effective communicator versed in disseminating research results through different media and for different audiences, including a non-technical audience. We also have with us Rajeshri Bhatia. She's the founder and lead thinker of School Smarts, LLC, where she has helped organizations with high-level recruiting and networking projects, helped groups begin the process of starting schools, provided consulting services, and worked to improve processes and outcomes in a variety of organizations. She currently works as the Deputy Director for School Performance for Grand Valley State University's Charter Schools Office, serving to oversee school performance of the statewide portfolio of schools that GVSU charters and overseeing the team of school support personnel who provide direct support to schools. She also develops and plans the office's professional education programming for the leaders, teachers, and staff in GVSU's 80-plus charter schools. She has over 20 years of experience teaching students at all grade levels, leading and starting schools, coaching and developing staff, and reforming educational organizations. Leah Breen has served at the Michigan Department of Education in various roles since 2008. She is currently director of the Office of Educator Excellence, where she provides oversight for education policy and all components of the educator pipeline: recruitment, preparation, licensure, school safety, placement, evaluation, recognition, and professional learning for the state of Michigan. Prior to her work with educator preparation, Ms. Breen held a variety of leadership and instructional roles in support of K-12 at-risk students. In her free time, Ms. Breen also serves on several nonprofit boards in support of education and children's safety, and is a staunch advocate for women and children's rights. And finally, Ben Pineda is going into his 34th year of teaching. It will be his 31st year at Hazlitt Middle School, where he has taught mostly 8th grade social studies. He is the advisor for HMS's Gay Straight Alliance, Conservation, and Black Student Union clubs. Ben also serves as the mentor teacher for a unique mentoring program for MSU teacher education seniors. Outside of Hazlitt Middle School, Ben facilitates a support network for teachers who serve as mentors for MSU teacher education interns and NEST, New Educators Support Team, which is a monthly workshop that offers support and guidance to help new teachers thrive in their profession. In addition, Ben also works with the Michigan Department of Education to evaluate and write standardized test items for social studies and language arts. Thank you to each of you for being here today. We really appreciate it. We have a few questions prepared for our discussion, but we will also respond to questions in the comment section, both on Facebook and YouTube. So be sure to share your questions there. Okay, we can go ahead and get started. My first question is for Leah and Rajeshri. What challenges have districts faced in recruiting and retaining teachers? And what are ways you've seen them overcome these challenges?
So I'll start. I mean, we heard it in the documentary. Salary and quality of life are big obstacles. There's certainly a great reward to teaching, but as our folks in the documentary stated, over time it becomes sometimes very difficult to manage the salary differential and kind of what it takes out of you. In addition, oftentimes teachers don't feel as though they have any real control over their performance or their profession. So there's a lack of autonomy at times. And the job is hard. I mean, it is emotionally and mentally challenging. So it's oftentimes hard to get folks who maybe start to stay in the profession, because over time we learn strategies and ways to cope, but those first initial years can be very challenging. I've seen districts employ some really innovative strategies, starting with, obviously adjusting salary and finding ways to offer bonuses or other incentives to teachers to sort of help that financial gap. I've also seen strategies that districts have employed where teachers get an opportunity to exercise leadership and have some ownership over what happens in the school. And that oftentimes is one of the big things that teachers respond to. In talking with teachers, I know that school support and support from leadership is a big area that we all look at and can, again, be a big difference maker. I think when teachers feel supported and valued in whatever format that comes in, that is how school districts are able to attract and retain them.
Leah, anything to add there?
I support everything Rajeshri said, of course, and what we heard in the video. I think I would add that we have heard from teachers that one of the problems they face in teaching is a lack of support from their school leadership and sometimes their school communities in general. It can be helped with mentoring, as was mentioned, but providing training for our principals and superintendents to ensure that they're instructional leaders and can really support what's happening in the classrooms in the school setting is also really important. Teachers are really skilled individuals. In general, we're good communicators. We have all kinds of expertise, and the pay range makes it very easy for teachers to transition into other fields. And so I think, making sure that our school communities and our salary range are competitive and enticing are really key.
That's great. And Leah, to follow up on that, how is the Michigan Department of Education helping districts overcome these challenges? What are MD's current and planned initiatives related to recruitment and retention?
Sure. We have an entire strategic plan devoted to recruitment and retention, and then we have a separate strategic plan devoted to recruitment and retention of educators of color, because we know there is massive underrepresentation in the profession, not only here in Michigan, but nationally. So in the documentary, I mentioned the Welcome Back Proud Michigan Educator campaign, where we waived some of the recertification requirements. And we're really excited to announce that at this point, we've had almost 150 educators return to classrooms in partnership with school districts through that campaign. So we consider that to be pretty darn successful. And, we have a team of individuals that are working with our educators out in the field and our school leaders to constantly be coming up with ideas to support teachers, to bring them back. We're working on additional funding opportunities with the legislature. We launched a campaign for high school students to engage them early on and support them into entering the profession. We're hoping to bolster that with some scholarship funds in the future for students that are engaging in these high school programs. And we have probably 70 initiatives going in support of recruitment and retention. It's that important.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Leah. I'll shift gears just a little bit to Natalia. Natalia, she led the study that this documentary shares the findings from. So from a research perspective, Natalia, what does the research tell us about certified teachers who are not teaching in Michigan and the reasons for not teaching?
Well, happy to talk about this, Maggie. I think I will probably be reiterating a little bit of what we've already talked about in a documentary. Just maybe I'll focus on the caveats a little bit more about what's not in the documentary. So we have heard a lot about the salary, and certainly when we reached out in our study to teachers who are not certified teachers who are not teaching in public schools in Michigan, we have had teachers select low salary as one of their top reasons for not teaching in a public school. And in some instances, they left the school, or in some cases, they never even entered teaching after getting that initial certificate. But some of the other reasons that we have discovered aren't related to the pay, but they're related to career growth. Like, for instance, our second most frequently selected reasons for why teachers aren't in the classroom is because they left to become instructional leaders. And when I say instructional leaders, I mean a principal, or they moved to a district leadership role. And also related to that, some of our respondents said that they decided to take classes to improve their career growth, or some kind of other related activity to their growth in education. So I think it's important to remember that leaving the classroom does not always equate to leaving education, and some people move into serving students in a different role.
Yeah, absolutely. And building off of that, what more can you share about the incentives that would motivate teachers to return to the classroom based on this study and on your research?
Yes, so big surprise, right? So salary was on top of our list for incentives, and there's some other incentives related to financial benefits, like forgiveness of student loans, or the ability for retirees, if they come back to teaching, to maintain their retirement benefits, things like that. But one of the other reasons that were on top of our list and have come up in what Leah had said is the ability to renew certificates more easily, right? And so that was a little bit of a surprise for us, because you've heard from the documentary that Michigan has relaxed in some ways the ability for teachers to renew their certificates or to earn their certificates. So maybe some of those who left the classroom did not know about this. And that was in some ways an interesting finding. And as you have heard, the Michigan Department of Education have reached out and started a campaign of getting the teachers back, which has been pretty successful.
Absolutely. All right, my next question is for Ben. Ben, thanks for being here. So as a longtime educator, what brings you to the classroom every day? And how does that connect to what you learned from the study that Natalia was just sharing about the certified teachers who are not in the classroom, and what you are seeing in your school and districts?
Well, the first part of that question is really easy for me to answer. the thing that brings me into the classroom every single day, and that's why I love my Mondays, are my students. They are the future. They help to keep me young, which I need all the help I can get, right? I think we all do. And what better way to stay young than to be with the youth and to be with, like I said, the potential of tomorrow is great. And it's really great, not because of people like me, it's great because of the students that are in our classrooms. So the students are the big reason why I'm here. And I teach 8th grade, which is such a pivotal year. And I love this charge in 8th grade because it's trying to prepare them for that next big chapter in life, high school. Similarly to maybe what a teacher that teaches seniors, getting them ready for the real world. Now, in regards to a message for anybody that's interested in teaching, I just can't think of a better community service than serving your school district, your community, and helping young minds get ready for the real world and navigate through the craziness of being an adolescent and a teenager. It's quite a challenge and very rewarding. And, I know there's a lot of mention about teacher salary and things like that, but I feel like I'm the richest guy in the world because of what teaching gives to me. Amazing gifts every single day, high fives, smiles. When eyes pop out and those light bulbs go on in the brain, you can see it. You can see their body language, their demeanor. They're excited about stuff. That's priceless. That's just the best. So the kids, bring me back. Serving the community, it's just one of the best ways to go in terms of helping and giving back, being a teacher.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Ben. And I have to tell you, Ben, I have a soft spot in my heart for teachers of 8th graders. My mom is also an 8th grade teacher, long time, over 30 years now. And I just wanted to share a reminder to all of our viewers out there. If you have questions or comments that you'd like to share, reactions to the documentary, any questions that you have for our terrific panel, please do leave them in the comment section on Facebook Live or YouTube, wherever you're watching today. Let's see. I've got another question for Rajeshri. Rajeshri, what role do you think school leaders can play in improving teacher recruitment and retention efforts related to certified teachers not teaching in the classroom?
I think part of what school leaders can do is really demonstrate why teachers should come back, right? Make it, if you talk to people about their jobs, a lot of times people have opportunities to leave, but don't want to because they don't want to leave their boss. They don't want to leave the team. There's a community that's been built that, is more of a draw than a new opportunity might be. So I think principals can really, and school leaders can really help to articulate that by being involved in the hiring process. Sometimes, especially in large districts, the school leader may not get involved until the final steps. And if we can get them involved a little earlier, then they have an opportunity to convey the kind of leadership that they offer, the kind of team that they build, and again, how they value all the teachers in the school. I think it's really important when we're trying to bring teachers back into the fold to remember these were people who chose us as a profession at one point in time. So there's something that attracted them to it. I think it's important to figure out, maybe perhaps why they left and what would bring them back, right? So that individualized, like what's going to make it really interesting for them to come back. And finding out what else matters to them, right? Sometimes it's not about something that's, in a job description. Sometimes it's about what that person needs. And we heard earlier about career growth, or maybe it's something else, but really kind of getting to know these folks and figuring out how they can help in that school to meet some of their sort of holistic needs, I think is a great way to sort of recruit and retain any kind of employee. I think we all, when we're teachers, we all want to work with kids. We all want to have impact. We want a chance to lead with our hearts and our passion. And I think as a school leader, if you can demonstrate how you support that happening and what you can do for that individual, I think that can go a really long way into attracting some of these people to come back into the profession. Because the word on the street is, as we talked about, teaching is hard, and there's all these sort of negatives, but there's a lot of positives, as Ben sort of has pointed out. And I think really reminding them of that and what it looks like in your individual school can have huge impact on somebody looking to return back into the field.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's something we saw in the documentary too, Rajeshri, is by providing those supports and those resources, even if it's markers or supplies, ranging from much larger supports, I think that can pave the way for those moments that teachers really thrive in, and that's connecting with kids. Do others have other thoughts from the panel about how supportive school leadership plays a role in teacher retention?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that. I think a couple of things that we need to think about are the demographics of teachers entering the workforce right now. And it's shifted over the years. Teachers entering the workforce now are less likely to get pensions. They're less likely to stay in the field for 30 or 40 years. We're seeing turnover that is pretty high at years 3 to 7, really. And so we need to think about what is this population, and largely it is still young females. And when we talk about leadership, how can we support those people? So two things that we haven't talked about are, one, when we look at leadership, it is largely white men that are 50 years and older. And so there is a disconnect between the propensity of this profession of all females to actually become leaders in our profession. So I think it's really important that we all take a look at that, figure out why that's happening, and correct to ensure that we're growing from this great group of people in the field into our leadership roles. Second, keeping in mind that they're young females, things that support flexibility to both serve as a parent and serve as a teacher, so that they're not having to choose their family and having to leave the workforce and maybe come back later. So again, of course, that goes to salary, because if it costs more to put your children in daycare than it does than your salary, that's a big factor in a decision that we have with our young teachers. So providing on-site childcare, providing positions, shared time positions, so teachers can work part-time with another person and have part-time with their family, providing flexibility so that they can attend events. We heard that teachers often can't attend the same celebrations and classroom activities for their own children that other parents can when they come to their classroom, the way that things used to be, and trying to think about it more dynamically and flexibly to support new teachers.
Maggie, if I can just add to that, sometimes it may seem like it's hard to do some of what Leah is describing, but in reality, as a school leader, while you don't always have control over every factor, there are things you can do in a school building. So for example, when I was a school leader, I had a teacher who fit the description that Leah just said, young, female, new mom. And she was looking to leave. And all she really needed was for me to say, you know what, I won't give you a first period class for this next semester, because that allowed her to make the arrangements in her life that she needed to make, so she didn't have to worry about, extra childcare, extra funds, etc. It was a very simple thing that I could do, and gladly I did it. And that helped keep a really talented teacher with us through a time where she needed that support. And, it was something that cost us no money. It was something that we could do very easily. And, it made a huge difference to her. And allowed her to stay. The other thing is, we talk about leadership. We think about the formal leadership paths that exist and sort of going from one level to the other. But leadership can happen in many different ways. And sometimes it's also about recognizing skills and talents in the team you have in front of you and giving opportunities to lead, and sort of helping people, again, lead with their hearts and their passion, and allowing them that flexibility to sort of take initiatives. And again, as I think about my experience in school leadership, there were several times when, I or someone else who was in a former leadership position could have taken control and sort of taken the leadership for certain activities. But instead, we allowed teachers and others in the school to step up and do that. And that in and of itself helped them with their own professional growth, helped them feel valued. And then we recognized their growth. And we actually, were able to sort of start building our bench strength for our leadership, just simply by sort of giving people opportunities like that. But those are the kinds of things that make a difference on a day-to-day basis to people, and again, show them that they're valued.
I'll add to that a little bit too, Maggie. I agree with everything that Rajeshri and Leah were saying. And I would advise to school leaders and district leaders to take a close look at their at their situation in their location and their context, right? So like in our study, we're looking at all of these various places and looking across different teachers from different places, but the specific needs in a specific context could be very different. Like for instance, if you do have a lot of young families, having that flexibility that Leah has been talking about could be huge, right? Or having job sharing for young families could be that exact way that they can still stay teaching and still be able to attend to their families. And even small, like, salary is a big thing, right? And it's impossible to overlook. But having better communication about maybe not just the salary, but the entire compensation package, which could easily get lost, could make a difference for some teachers deciding to stay or deciding to leave. So I would definitely encourage that close look and communication with your teaching workforce to be able to respond to their needs appropriately.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you all for sharing. And I see that we have a viewer comment that I want to flag. They say, "I'm a teacher by trade," in parentheses, once a teacher, always a teacher, but work outside of the classroom as the director of the Illinois New Teacher Collaborative. Glad to hear that you are looking forward to reading the study, and thanks for being here. I'm calling from Chicago, so it's great to have you here. I've got another question for Ben. Ben, what has your school or district done throughout the pandemic that you hope will be carried forward to support teacher recruitment and or retention and providing supports for teachers going forward?
Well, it's something that was mentioned in the documentary by Jordan Parks. Your administrator and all the leaders that affect you on a daily basis can make or break the situation. And one of the things that I feel so fortunate about being a teacher here at Hazlet Middle School is I just work with an amazing group of individuals, principals, associate principals, and staff. I can't tell you how many times I've spoken with colleagues that's like a given for me, but it's not a given for everybody. And so if you have a situation where your administrator in the building or staff members make life a little tougher for you, that's a real turnoff. And so what I really love is a lot of the support, just the little things sometimes that our administrators will say, hey, we're all in this together. Let's stick together. If you need anything, don't hesitate to call on us. Just things like that. And I really feel like in the 31 years that I've been in this middle school, that culture has always been here. And that is huge. Having a culture that's stable and consistent and sustainable. So if you're a teacher here at Hazlet Middle School, you're in a great situation and you're riding a very steady and very confident ship, and a ship that is very supporting and looking forward to a better day for you tomorrow. And if you're not the only person looking for a better day tomorrow, then you're going to be very well supported. So I sometimes maybe take that for granted, but we get reminders all the time of just how amazing it is to be supported by admin and other staff members.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ben. And I see that we have a comment from a viewer. We need teacher leaders as well as school leadership in admin roles. Does anyone have reactions to that statement on our panel?
Yeah, I'd like to speak to that. I definitely agree. And, it's a little bit of a misnomer because we have teacher leaders. We all know individuals that we work with in schools that are teacher leaders. So I think, what this means is we need formal recognition and compensation for teacher leaders and actual roles and job descriptions and recognition. And I could not agree with that more. I do think that's true. And I think it does offer pathways like we talked about before, instead of the traditional, I have to be a principal or I have to be a superintendent. You don't have to be those things. You can be a teacher leader that focuses on instruction. You can be a teacher leader that focuses on policy. You can, any number of things. In Michigan, we have built pathways for teacher leaders. So we have formal programs that we've developed. And we also count national board certification as a teacher leader, and it's an actual certificate type you can attain. What would make it really important is if school districts appended compensation to attainment of that endorsement for that role. Because right now it's nice and some people have it, particularly our national board teachers, but it doesn't really get them anything other than the recognition on paper.
Absolutely. That's great, Leah. And I'm thinking about, and circling back to this question about supports during the pandemic. Are there other things that any of you have seen districts or schools do during the pandemic to support teachers and to support recruitment and retention efforts?
I think flexibility was a big thing. Really, understanding that during the pandemic in particular, and even now, teachers were, a lot of burden came onto teachers. They were doing something new. They were doing it in a way that we hadn't done it before. They had to, balance being parents and teachers at the same time. And so I think, flexibility really meant a lot to teachers. And even if it wasn't as much flexibility as maybe, we wanted, I think, as Ben said, that the principals and others saying, we're in this together, and at least acknowledging that it was challenging, really helped teachers, continue to do the work. I think also what we learned through the pandemic was, while it wasn't ideal when we did it, that we did learn to become better using virtual tools and other tools in our, that we have access to. And so I think some of the schools I've seen have looked at some of the practices that worked and taken feedback and input from teachers to help develop, how they're doing school now. And I think that opportunity for teachers to have voice and sort of share what worked and then be able to sort of lead that effort has also been really valuable.
Fantastic. And I see we have 3 minutes left. I feel like this discussion has flown by. So I want to first thank our wonderful panelists for being here today and for joining us and for contributing to such a rich discussion. I have one last question, and it's for all of you. So I was hoping that we could sort of go around and I'd like to ask all of you, what advice do you have for district and state leaders looking to improve teacher retention and recruitment efforts within their districts? Does anyone want to go first? Thanks, Natalia.
I will say that if you are in a place where you have limited resources, which is often the place, right? And you have to choose and pick, concentrate on your 3 to 5, like the beginning of the career teachers, because they need the most support and they are most likely to leave. Like all of the research that we do, all of the statistics that we see, that window, that first 5 years, and the support that the teacher is going to get in that first initial career building is going to make or break that teacher. So if you have to choose, focus there.
And I'd like to piggyback off that. I think one of the most important words in education, whether you're a teacher or a learner, and we're all learners, right? And we're all teachers, is empathy. I think it's one of the greatest tools that I try to employ every single day in regards to my students. We all used to be in 8th grade, right? We all have things that we loved and all things that we weren't so crazy about. And I think that's an important thing to think about, whether you're a teacher and the leader of a classroom, or whether you're a principal and a leader of a building, or whether you're a superintendent and the leader of the entire district. Having empathy and understanding that flexibility is needed, which has been mentioned a few times already in this discussion. It's one of my favorite words, is empathy. And it's a word that I'm learning more and more about as the years go on, that's for sure.
I would say think out of the box. I think that we are in a time and place where we can't continue to do business as we have always done in schools. They can't look the same as they have. They can't be structured the same. And we need creative, innovative leaders to have high expectations and shake things up and do things differently and meet not only student needs, but also our teachers' needs and our community's needs. And it needs to look very different than it has looked before.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. I think it's really about remembering why we do this, why we have schools, why we have teachers, what's the purpose, and putting that front and center. I think also even with limited resources, there is still always some room to prioritize things that matter. Budgets, as an example, reflect priorities. So I would really encourage every school leader to look at your budget and make sure that it's telling the story that you want it to tell. And if not, figure out a way to make it tell that story. Because even though it may not be huge increases or huge changes, every little bit does count, and it matters, right? It matters when you prioritize something. The other thing, and we've heard it already, is care for your teachers. Show them that they matter. Show them that they're valued. Make it a place that people want to work. Teacher appreciation should be every day, not just 1 week or 1 month. But again, reflecting that as a priority. People respond to that. People respond to feeling good. People respond to empathy, and teachers are people with big hearts. So the more we can kind of appeal to that and value that, the better chances we have for keeping people into the field.
Thank you so much. Thanks to all of you for sharing. I see we're at time. I wanted to also thank our viewers for spending the afternoon with us. Please check out the links on DPTV's webpage for this event to learn more about this work and about REL Midwest. Thanks so much. Thanks again to our panelists, and take care.